Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Cognitive Recalibration Podcast. As always, I'm your host Shravan. We've got Taran here with us.
Hey everyone.
Back in lockdown, but still producing podcasts. That's what we're here for. We're here for your entertainment.
Still kicking along.
Yes. So today we're going to do something a little bit different because Raya and the Last Dragon is coming out. Is it Raya or Raya? I think it's Raya.
Raya. Is it R-E-A-Y or R-E-Y-A or R-A-Y-A?
R-A-Y-A. Raya?
Raya, maybe. Yeah.
Do you know it has, what's that girl's
Kelly
name?
Berry Tran.
Yeah, it's got her. And Aquafina as well.
It's good that she's getting some work.
You mean Kelly Marie Tran?
Yeah.
Yeah, she got a lot of hate, Star Wars. Unnecessary hate. But anyway, we thought we'd revisit. That's a Disney animation. That's the latest Disney animation that's coming out. So we thought we'd actually start a segment that's going to probably go for many, many years on our podcast. But basically, we're going to do a tier list for Disney movies, and we're going to do it by each era. So I think there's roughly 7 eras that they split. And this is like unofficial. It's not a Disney thing. But basically, there's 7 eras in Disney, in terms of Disney animation movies. So this is not Pixar. This is just the Disney, just the base Disney movies. So there's the Golden Age, there's the Wartime era, then after that there's the Silver Age, then the Bronze Age, then the Disney Renaissance, which a lot of people that maybe listen to this podcast would have started watching Disney around the Disney Renaissance. So this is like Aladdin, Lion King, Little Mermaid, all of those movies, so 90s movies. And then after the Renaissance, there's the post-Renaissance era, which is like the 2000s, early like 2000s to 2010. And then after that, there's the revival era, which is from 2010 onwards. So we're going to go through every single Disney movie that's been made, Disney animation movie, and that's quite a lot of movies. But we're going to start with the Golden Age today. So the Golden Age was between 1937 and 1942. This is called the Golden Age because that's when they started. These are the first movies that feature films that Walt Disney ever made. But they're not really golden because they're basically, when they came out, they didn't really make money. The first 5 movies that came out, and these are classified under Golden Age, are Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo and Bambi. So Snow White made money and Dumbo made money when they came out, but the other 3 did not make money. They spent more than they made in their initial releases. Obviously, they've had re-releases over the years, and they've eventually made back their money. But when they initially came out, they were loss-making ventures. Another thing is most Disney movies, when you think of Disney movies, what do you think of? Upbeat, sort of kids-friendly movies, right? Generally, that's the vibe you get from most of them anyway. These movies are not really like that. So I've recently gone through and I've seen Snow White many times. I didn't rewatch Snow White, but I watched Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi. And they're pretty dark and just a bit sad in general. I wouldn't call them upbeat movies. And there's a lot of dark imagery and stuff as well. The Golden Age is often called, I think it's called Sugar and Tar, because it goes from an upbeat scene to a very dark and sad or depressing scene. So you see that in like Bambi and Snow White and Pinocchio and everything. Another thing is these movies, when they did come out, they actually scared a lot of the children that watch these movies. And I've got some facts about that later. But there are scary moments in basically all of these movies. And I know that you don't particularly like these movies.
No, I do not. Mostly because they're boring as hell.
I think they're a product of their time, really. Well, you have to realize that these movies are like really old. So
no, they're very old. Yeah. But just because something's old, I'm not going to like it even if it's shit.
I think there's still a little bit of charm to them, but I think the key thing with all these movies is there really isn't much of a story. So Snow White, you could summarize a story in like 2 sentences, but somehow they, drag it out to over an hour. Same with Dumbo, same with Bambi as well. There's really not much of a story. And then Fantasia, we'll get to Fantasia.
Fantasia's just fucking... Yeah.
We'll get to Fantasia, but that's a different thing altogether. But anyway, we'll start with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I guess the tier list, what are our tiers? It's trash.
That's all we need for this.
I think it's...
Don't need the other ones.
Trash, meh, okay, good, and God, right?
To be honest, I could put Snow White in meh.
Okay. And the rest in trash.
Maybe, well, we'll get to them, won't we?
Yeah, we'll get to them. Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with Snow White.
For Snow White, I could put Snow White in meh.
Okay.
It's got decent stuff in it, I guess. I wouldn't watch it again. I never want to watch it again. But I have seen it and it was enjoyable.
A bit about Snow White. So it came out on the 21st of December 1937. That's a long time ago. The runtime's 83 minutes. Budget-wise, it was 1.49 million back in those days. So if you convert that to present-day numbers, like adjust for inflation, it's about 27 million. And then box office-wise, so over all the years, all the re-releases, everything, it's made about 418 million. And when you adjust that for inflation, it's over $1 billion. So it's obviously, over time, it's become a very profitable and money-making movie for Disney. In terms of Rotten Tomatoes, because I went through and looked at what the critical ratings on each of these are. What do you think Snow White has, Rotten Tomatoes-wise?
I would say it's probably too high. I would say it's too high for what it is.
Okay. So you're thinking like over 90.
I would say it's fresh.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's easily fresh and it's actually one of the highest rated. So it's 98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's too good for what it is because critics they love stuff that's old. And this movie's it's not good. If you compare it to what recent stuff is, it's really not good. But because it's the first animated movie, I guess they have that nostalgia to it.
Yeah. And I guess it has, I think you can appreciate it from an animation standpoint because when you think about when this came out and how it still looks pretty good. Like it's a hand-drawn animation and there's like a certain charm to it. And I guess the dwarves and stuff in this are there is some interesting, I wouldn't say interesting. There's parts that are okay with the dwarves in this. The Snow White stuff is not that interesting because the overall story is not that interesting, but there's some stuff with the dwarves which is not bad and the animation's pretty good. It still holds up. Apparently at that point in time, it was the highest grossing film ever in 1937. So Gone with the Wind hadn't yet come out. So it was the highest grossing film ever. It won 1 Academy Award. So it's not like a award that exists now. So it's an honorary award for significant screening innovation. And apparently they presented this to Walt Disney and it was 1 normal Oscar and like 7 small Oscars for like the dwarves. So you got like a custom made Oscar.
Oh, okay.
And when he received the award, and I think this was back when they didn't have time limits for speeches, so he could talk as long as he wanted. So apparently he talked for 25 minutes and most of that was devoted to promoting his next movie, which was Pinocchio. Apparently the film received a standing ovation when it first released. A lot of people thought this would be a failure because they just didn't think that a full-length animated movie was something that could make money or something that would be good. Because at that stage, the only animated stuff was like shorts that Disney made, which were just like, short jokes with like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and stuff. So they didn't think this would be successful, but obviously they were left breathless by the end of it. I mean, there's a lot of difference. Apparently it was on like the cover of Time magazine. So it was like a really big deal back in 1937. Variety back in those days reported that Snow White had a remarkably long box office run at the theaters in Sydney. So apparently it ran for like a year or something
They loved it here.
in here. And it was the same in most places. So it was a raging box office success, Snow White. It had multiple re-releases subsequently. So it re-released in 1944. At that stage, Disney were losing money because the movies they made after this didn't really make much. And also because of World War II, so not really anyone was watching movies. So they needed to recoup some money, and they re-released it in 1944. And then after that, they re-released it every 10 years, so approximately every 10 years. So it was like 1952, 1958, 67, 75, 83, 87, and 1993. And then in 1993, they eventually released it to VHS. But basically, it's still, when you adjust for inflation, it's still the highest grossing animated film of all time.
Cool. Doesn't deserve any of those accolades.
Oh, and one more thing. So all of these 5 movies, it is someone's favorite movie, like a famous person's favorite movie. So this movie, and it's a infamous person, it's Adolf Hitler's favorite movie.
Yeah, that makes it even worse.
Apparently, it's along with King Kong, 1933's King Kong, and Sun Valley Serenade of 1941. Along with those movies, this one is Adolf Hitler's favorite film. I mean, I got other bits of trivia, but basically, I mean, this movie was the first for a lot of things. It was a technical achievement, so they did a lot of things with this movie, and it kind of paved the way for Disney going forward. I mean, they had stuff in between, which we'll talk about in other episodes where they weren't doing as well, but now they're basically too big to fail, I guess, because they've got all this other stuff, and it kind of all started with this movie. Apparently, the film was going to include 3 assassination attempts, so the Queen was going to try to kill Snow White multiple times. She only ends up killing her the first time she tries. She basically kills her, so she gives her the apple. But there's going to be a poison comb and like a dress that suffocates her as well, which they didn't include because it was too late in the production and they couldn't get the animation done. So that's that. And I guess this started the trend that Disney makes fairy tales as well, because they're still doing that.
Yes.
So I would give it just based on everything that it's achieved, and it's still got a certain charm to it. So I'd probably put it in good.
I think you can't put a movie in good because it achieved something. It's how good the movie is. Would you watch the movie?
Yeah, I'd watch it. I mean, I did watch it, so I've watched it many times. So I think I would put it in good.
Yeah. Well, I just don't think it's that good of a movie. It's not that good for me, at least, and I find it quite boring.
The part which I was saying was scary was the part where the Queen transforms into the old lady.
A dragon or whatever.
The old lady.
Oh,
yeah.
The old lady. Yeah. Okay.
So that part is, even now, it's like a bit creepy.
You know, I'm not a fan of these movies, though. So, look, if I wanted to, I'd put them all in trash.
Yes.
So.
Okay, I think we could agree that it's sort of like low, good, meh level, right? So, you're saying meh, so there's okay in between, actually. So maybe we'll go in between, I think it's and go chuck it in okay.
Okay, fine. Yeah. I don't like that, but I guess that's where it's going.
Well,
these next months better go and trash that.
There's a midpoint between our two.
That's the thing. But that's the thing, though. If you put this in good, and then we get to some of the newer movies, and you go, okay, let's go Frozen or something, and you're like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So you're saying Frozen is as good as this?
I think so.
Is basically what happens.
I think so. I think. Well, Frozen.
So you would watch Frozen, and you would watch this over Frozen, or you would watch them both equally.
Frozen might not be a good example, but maybe something like, what's another movie that they've done? Like a Hercules or something. It's probably better than Hercules, to be honest. I'll probably watch it over Hercules.
Well, Hercules is not that good anyway, so.
I mean, I think it's good. I'd watch it. I wouldn't, it's not something I'd revisit all the time, but it's not that bad.
All right. It's going in okay.
Yeah.
It's going in okay.
All right. Pinocchio was the next movie that came out. February 7th, 1940, runtime of 88 minutes, budget of 2.6 million. Converted to today's numbers, that's 49 million. So it's a big budget. And box office-wise, over all the re-releases and everything, it's made 164 million. And once you adjust that for inflation, it's close to 600 million that it's made. Rotten Tomatoes, how much do you think this has?
too high. Whatever it is, it's too high.
Well, it's as high as you can be. So it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it won 2 Academy Awards. So for original song and original score. Original song being the song, well, the music that we hear before every Disney movie, When You Wish Upon a Star. So that's their theme now, Disney's theme. So that's the song from this movie. That's where it started. Pinocchio was intended to be Disney's 3rd movie, actually. Bambi was meant to be their 2nd, but Bambi got delayed quite a bit. They had difficulties animating animals for Bambi. This was also re-released many times, so it was released like once every 10 years as well. When this did come out, it didn't actually make much money because, firstly, it was the war, so not many people were watching it, and it was darker than Snow White. Probably wasn't the tone that people were expecting this movie to be. So overall in this movie, I watched this yesterday, so overall what you get from it is there's a lot of horrible people in the world because everyone that Pinocchio meets is a horrible person except for his creator, so his father, and Jiminy Cricket. Everyone else is horrible in this movie, and he learns a lot of hard lessons, I guess, throughout this film. This one I'd put below Snow White, personally. It's, again, there's some like dark imagery and potentially scary scenes in this because there's children turning into donkeys at one stage. Freaky imagery because they show it in like a shadow, and it's a bit weird.
It's been so long since I've seen this, I don't even know if I can rank it. I can't remember if it was good or not. I'll go based off your ranking on this one. I definitely know it's not better than good, though.
No, I'd put it in sort of low okay, high meh range. It feels a bit long, but it's not actually that long a movie. And the best part is the animation. So the animation looks good, and you can see that they've gone a step ahead of Snow White in this one. So it looks better than what they had in Snow White. Apart from that, I mean, I would probably put it in meh because it's a bit sad, and it's not something that you'd want to revisit that often. And they're actually remaking it now, so we'll see what they do with it. So it's a bit of a sad movie. Put it in meh, I guess. Yeah, it's not trash because it's just something you probably wouldn't watch, but you're not going to like hate yourself while you're watching it. It's just okay. It is one of the favorite films of director Terry Gilliam. So he's best known for Monty Python. He was part of the Monty Python crew, so it's his favorite film.
Fair enough.
Next movie to release was Fantasia, released in the same year, 1940. Runtime, this is criminally long runtime for this movie, 126 minutes. So it's actually still the longest animated movie from Disney.
Well, this is not even a movie. Like, I feel like it's just a acid trip from some bloke. It's hardly a movie. It's like an orchestral theme, and then there's a little story in the middle.
The way Disney described it was it's an orchestrated music experience. So it's like you're going to watch
opera.
Yeah, like you're going to listen to an orchestra, and there's just some artwork that accompanies that.
Yeah, there's no story. It's just colors and an acid trip, basically.
This was a pretty big budget movie again. So it's 2.28 million. Converted to today's numbers is 43 million. And box office wise, it wasn't a success when it came out, but over the years it's made money. So overall, when you convert it back to today's numbers, it's made about 750 million. Rotten Tomatoes wise, definitely higher than I expected. Even for this era, it's 95%, which is quite high considering this is barely even a movie. And it won one Academy Award.
So just giving him out back then.
So it won another honorary award for outstanding contribution to music and sound. So this was the first movie that used technology called Fantasound, which was like the first surround sound system. So it was an innovator in that sense. The reason this movie even came about was, so in 1936, so this was before Snow White even came out, Walt Disney felt that the Disney Studios character, Mickey Mouse, the star character, needed a boost in popularity. So he wanted to do a short with Mickey Mouse based off The Sorcerer's Apprentice. and they started making this, but then it started getting too expensive, the short itself. So then they're like, well, we need to get money back for this. So let's put it into a series of shorts and make a movie out of that. And we'll put an orchestra behind it. So it'll be like a musical experience. So that's how this movie came about. Interesting thing is, so I started watching this on Disney Plus, and before the movie starts, there's advisory thing that comes up, advisory description, and basically it says this program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we wanted to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience around the globe. To learn more about how stories have impacted society, please visit the Disney website. I think there are some like racist depictions and stuff in this movie, but to be honest, I wasn't paying that much attention because it's hard to stay watching this movie because it's basically just music and there's like random abstract stuff happening on the screen. Like it's really not even a movie. There's 7 segments in it, and a lot of the music is music that popular classical music that we've heard before at some stage. So the most popular segment is the Sorcerer's Apprentice segment, one that most people would have at least seen some of, and that's with Mickey Mouse and how he makes the broomsticks clean up or whatever he needs to do with them. Obviously, it's been used as a basis for the Sorcerer's Apprentice live action movie with Nicolas Cage, which we are very fond of. So if anything, we're thankful that this was made so that we could get Sorcerer's Apprentice with Nicolas Cage, because we like that movie. And we'll talk about that movie at some stage on the podcast. Apparently, the sorcerer in that Sorcerer's Apprentice segment was modeled on Walt Disney as well. And his name is actually Yen Sid, which is Disney backwards. So it was a nod to Disney, and the animators did it on purpose. Even more than 80 years after its release, Disney still receives complaints from parents claiming that the night on Bald Mountain sequence terrified their children. I can't remember what that one was. I think it's one of the last ones, but I kind of tuned out when that was happening. So this was another movie that children actually found scary at some stage. To be honest, I don't know how children could have sat through this because I barely could sit through this. It's the first appearance of Mickey Mouse on a Disney animated film. So people exist that say this is their favorite animated movie. Can you guess who it is? It's a director.
A current director?
Yeah. Current and past.
He's not dead.
He's alive. He's been around for a while.
Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, it is. Steven Spielberg's favorite animated motion picture of all time. Another thing on Steven Spielberg, when you aggregate all the box office returns from all these movies, he's by far the highest grossing director of all time, which is interesting. Like when you take into account inflation as well, because he made movies back in the 70s that made a ridiculous amount of money in 70s dollars. It's going to take a while before anyone surpasses him in terms of box office revenue anyway. There is a sequel to this called Fantasia 2000, and that also, it's a similar concept. So it has a series of different short stories accompanied by orchestral music, and the only segment that they reused from this was the Sorcerer's Apprentice segment. Live action spin-offs. So we talked about Sorcerer's Apprentice starring Nicolas Cage. There's also the Nutcracker and the Four Realms live action movie, because there's a Nutcracker segment in this movie as well. And then apparently the Night on the Bald Mountain segment was reported to be in development as well at Walt Disney. All that being said, I don't really recommend this movie, so I'd probably put it in low meh, even trash.
It's going in trash.
Okay, one good thing, I'll say one good thing about the movie. The music is good, so you could probably just listen. If you like classical music, you could just listen to the music, but the music isn't unique to this movie. It's It's music from other composers. So it's not like it was made for this movie, so I can't give it credit. We'll probably chuck it in trash then. 3 movies in out of the 5 movies, and we got Dumbo next. So Dumbo came out in 1941. It's a short movie, just over an hour. So budget-wise, it was significantly less than the previous films that we just talked about, and that's why it was able to make some money, because it was a low-budget movie. So it was a budget of about $950K. When convert that to $2021, it's about $17 million. And then box office wise, it made 1.3 million. And when you convert that, it's about 23 million. This is interesting because when it came out, it was successful. But as the years have gone on, it's been less successful. Still on Rotten Tomatoes, it's a insanely high rating, so 98%. And awards-wise, it did win one for best score on a musical picture. And when they initially put it out for distribution, they asked whether they could make the film longer because it was only 64 minutes in length. Disney said they can't add any more because they've already stretched it. And when you watch this, you understand that they have stretched it because there really isn't much of a story. Just like all the other films that we've talked about, it's been re-released many times. So almost every 10 years, it's had a re-release. And obviously a live action adaptation from Tim Burton as well recently. So despite the advent of World War II, Dumbo was still the most financially successful Disney film of the 1940s.
Which was also trash, just like this movie, which is going to go into trash.
So after its October 23 release, Dumbo proved to be a financial miracle compared to other Disney films. The simple film only cost $950 million to produce, but $950,000 to produce. Which was half the cost of Snow White and less than a third of the cost of Pinocchio, and way less expensive than Fantasia as well. So that was kind of why it was able to make money. Initially, Walt Disney was uninterested in making the movie. To get him interested, some of the story writers wrote up the film in installments, and then finally he got interested and he wanted to see what happened next. And this is actually Walt Disney's favorite film. But he says one of the other movies is also his favorite film, so I think he was lying on one of them. But he is quoted to say that this is his favorite film that he's made. I don't have too much else to say. This was the first Walt Disney film to be set in America, and there's not many movies that Disney makes that are actually set in America. Apparently, when Dumbo is seen standing on his own after his mother is taken away, swaying sadly from side to side, that's something that elephants actually do when they're emotionally distraught. So they did some research into what elephants do. But overall, this movie's infamous for that one segment where Dumbo gets drunk and he goes on an acid trip.
Ah, yes. Yeah, I do remember that. And isn't there like racist birds in this movie or something?
I think there is. Yeah, I didn't watch this on Disney Plus, but it's probably going to have a very similar message at the beginning as what Fantasia did. Oh, the other thing with Fantasia, which I didn't mention, is apparently it had a revival in the 1960s when people loved watching that because it was like an acid trip. That's where it made a lot of money in the 60s. But overall, yeah, Dumbo is probably another one I wouldn't watch that often because there's not much to the story. Animation's okay.
It's too depressing.
Yeah, I think I'd put it... It's probably still better than Fantasia. I'd watch it over Fantasia, but it'd land...
I think it still goes in trash.
It'd probably still land in low, may, high trash, so probably trash.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're into the last one, Bambi. Don't remember watching this, so I watched it again, and I don't think I've actually ever watched this. So it came out in 1942. Runtime is about 70 minutes. Budget is $858,000, which is about 14 million in today's numbers. And box office wise, it's made 267 million. When converted for inflation, it's about 600 million. Rotten Tomatoes wise, it's the lowest out of all of these, 90%. Still high, but the lowest out of all of these. It didn't win any Academy Awards. I guess one thing about this movie is it is artistically very nice. The forest and the animals and all of that, you can see Disney style in it. You see that style kind of many, many years later in Lion King with the animation of the animals. But again, it's a bit of a depressing movie. So
it's too sad.
Yeah. So a lot of people have PTSD from this movie because they get attached to Bambi and her mother. And
her mum.
Yeah. His mother, actually. All these years, I thought Bambi was a girl. Bambi's a guy.
I did as well.
Bambi's a guy.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. No, he's very clearly a guy because he gets antlers later in the movie. So he's a guy. And they call him as well. So he's a guy. Bambi's mother gets shot actually. And she gets shot off screen. But yeah, it's sad because you see Bambi walking around.
Would it be better if she got shot on screen?
I got a bit about that because the animators were proposing that because you don't actually see his dead mother. They were proposing that Bambi finds her in a pool of blood. Obviously, they didn't do that, but that would have been super super depressing and dark, even for an animated movie in this era. This is the other thing which I was mentioning earlier, where it like flips between tones really quickly, because you find out that his mother died, and the very next scene, it's like this upbeat song about spring, and like there's like birds flying around, and like it's the very next scene, and then you find out that there's been a time jump as well, because Bambi's older now and he has antlers and stuff. And then the end of the film, there's a fire and half the forest gets burnt down, so presumably some of the animals also die. Bambi obviously survives, but overall, there's actually no story to this movie. The only story. So at the start of the movie, Bambi is born. You kind of follow him around, and he like learns how to walk and stuff. Then his mum dies, and then he grows up, and then there's a fire, and they escape the fire, and that's the end of the movie.
So there's literally no plot.
Animation wise, it is very nice, hand drawn, and looks very nice, and they've obviously made some advances in animation, and just considering it came out in 1942, it still holds up really well. But apart from that, it's got nothing going for it in terms of story, so I can't recommend. And it's a bit actually pretty depressing for like little kids to watch.
It's not an enjoyable movie to watch.
I feel sorry for the little kids in 1942 that had to watch this and be scarred for the rest of their lives.
They're going to go through World War II anyway, so they'll be scarred anyway.
Yes. Apparently the animation from Bambi has been reused in most of the other Disney films, such as Beauty and the Beast and Sword in the Stone and Jungle Book. So any movies that had sort of animals, they've sort of reused it. It's the last full-length animated film until Cinderella. So there are going to be movies in this post-war era, but they're mostly like shorter movies. So this is like a full-length, feature-length film, and until Cinderella there wasn't another one. Many movie watchers in the 1940s were not prepared to see any killing in Disney movies at that time, and it's pretty this says it's pretty common nowadays, but the protagonist's relative, spouse or parent killed in movies to make a deeper, sadder story is what Disney started doing after this. So this was the first Disney movie to do it. Arguably the most horrific death in a Disney movie is Mufasa, most scarring one. So this ranks up there. But you don't actually see her die. Like, you hear it, but you don't actually see her die. In Mufasa, you actually see him like fall off a cliff and gets run over by wildebeest. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. This holds the record for the biggest release gap between a movie and its sequel. So it had a straight-to-DVD sequel in 2006. So it's 64 years between movies. And one of the rejected ideas was to show the hunter killed by the very forest fire that he accidentally started. At the end, there's a fire that kind of creeps up from the hunter's campgrounds, and it like burns down the whole forest. They don't actually show the hunter either. And the reason they don't show him is because they didn't want a negative connotation associated with hunters, because back in those days, hunting was like
it's very common,
like a recreational thing. Bambi I'd put above, what do we have in trash on there? Fantasia and Dumbo, right?
I think it still belongs in trash with those two.
Okay, animation-wise, it's better than Dumbo. Story-wise, even though it doesn't really have a story, it has more of a story than Fantasia. And probably, I mean, Dumbo sort of has a story. But yeah, it still belongs in trash. It's I'd probably put it above those two, but it still belongs in trash.
Yeah, agreed.
I know some people these are beloved films, and some people love them.
Oh, yeah. Some people love it, but it depends if you have nostalgia towards it or not. It's not based off the quality of the movie, I don't think.
Yeah, because I remember watching Snow White when I was a kid. So I did watch Snow White, and I think I did watch Pinocchio on VHS. Bambi, I just don't recall watching, so I don't think I've actually ever watched Bambi. And Fantasia, I think I've only watched the Sorcerer's Apprentice segment. I don't remember watching the other stuff. Do you know there's a part in Fantasia where there's dinosaurs, and there's a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus fight, and this T-Rex bites off a Stegosaurus' neck?
all the acid trip stuff, I have no idea. I don't know. I have no idea what happens in that part.
I didn't know that existed, but yeah, I was watching it yesterday, and there's like this whole segment with dinosaurs, and there's a T-Rex, and the T-Rex has a fight with a Stegosaurus, and like he brutally, you don't see the blood, but he like basically bites the neck of a Stegosaurus that exists. But the classical music in that is good, but like I said, it's not unique to that film. So overall, we've got Snow White in okay, Pinocchio in meh, and Bambi, Dumbo, and Fantasia in trash. So that's where we're ending the golden age at. It's not so golden in our eyes.
Yeah, I'm happy with that rating.
So other live action films coming up. So apparently there's a Snow White in development at Disney. There's obviously been multiple Snow White movies made. There's a Disney live action coming up in the direction of Mark Webb of Amazing Spider-Man fame. His better movie is 500 Days of Summer. So that's probably what he's better known for. And then there's a Pinocchio movie coming straight to Disney Plus, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Dumbo, obviously we've already had that, Tim Burton's version of Dumbo. And then Bambi is in development. So all of these are going to be made at some stage, except Fantasia, which they're not looking to make, which is good.
They're never going to do anything with that. Yeah.
Which is good. We don't need another one. And we've already got Sorcerer's Apprentice, so we don't need it. Just make a Sorcerer's Apprentice 2 instead.
Yeah.
They had they had a post-credit scene which was still left us hanging. We're still waiting for that.
Yeah, still waiting for the sequel for that one.
So overall, obviously you're not overly fond of this era of Disney's filmmaking.
No.
Maybe because when you were younger, like I watched some of these before you were born. So I watched this when I was younger. And once you were born, you mostly watch what I watch. And I wasn't watching these by that stage. I was probably watching like Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon and stuff. So that's probably what you have nostalgia on, not these movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
Although I think you would have watched like the 90s stuff. So like Lion King, Aladdin, those movies would have been more your Disney nostalgia. And I guess they're my Disney nostalgia as well.
Yeah.
This is the golden age of Disney filmmaking. So we got through the first stage of this. We've got a couple more rocky eras to get through before we get to the ones that we probably like. So the next one is the wartime era. So I haven't seen any of these movies. So there's Saludos Amigos, The Three Caballeros, Make Mine Music, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. They don't sound great.
No, they don't even ring a bell.
Yeah. So those are the wartime movies. And then the Silver Age is probably once they started picking up again in terms of the classics that we've heard of. So Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone, and Jungle Book. So those are slightly more modern films that we've seen. Still in the 50s, but yeah, slightly more modern. Did you know that 101 Dalmatians, when you adjust it for inflation, it's like in the top 5 movies ever? 101 Dalmatians?
That's way too high. I didn't know people loved that movie so much.
I think it did exceedingly well when it came out. So it came out like late 50s, early 60s, I think, and it did really, really well.
That's another one that they're remaking.
Yeah, but they're doing like a spin-off of that, right? Cruella.
Oh, it's like a prequel, yeah.
It's like a Maleficent thing that they're doing.
Yes, yeah.
And then the Bronze Age is one I haven't watched all the movies in this either. So there's Aristocats, which I think we watched once, Robin Hood, Winnie the Pooh, Rescuers, The Black Cauldron, The Great Mouse Detective. So these are like lesser known films. And this is when Disney wasn't doing that well either. And then Disney Renaissance is when we get into the 90s stuff. So that's when that's like their comeback. That's a big comeback with Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Little Mermaid. So yeah, we'll talk about those in a future episode when the next Disney film comes out, which is Encanto later this year. Which era of Disney is your most favorite? Like the latest one, I guess?
Definitely not this era. Yeah.
Are you thinking like the post-Tangled era, like the last 10 years?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to get into it and then we can decide which era is the best as well. This era ranks pretty low at the moment. But
Yes. Oh, I think the next one's going to trump this one.
The next one's going to, next one doesn't sound that promising, unfortunately.
Yeah, and maybe the 80s one, the Bronze Age, doesn't look as good either.
So we'll have to see how it goes.
And you're going to have to watch some of these at some stage.
Oh, I'm not looking forward to that wartime stuff. Maybe I'll just let you watch those.
All right. Cool. So I guess that brings us to the end of this one. I know these are we've trashed these a bit, and I know these are beloved films and they're like technological revolutions. I understand that, but I guess from our viewpoint, it's not something that we'd revisit over and over again. But yeah, do let us know your thoughts. So if people want to get in touch with us, how do they go about it?
So they can contact us on Cognitive Recalibration on all platforms, or email us at cognitiverecalibrationpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you want to support the podcast, you can give us a positive review on iTunes or Spotify, and that makes us more discoverable on search engines. You can further support the podcast via using our Amazon affiliate links, which I'll link each of these movies down below. And also you can give us a one-off donation on Buy Me a Coffee, which we'll use to further develop the podcast. You were not looking forward to this episode. You were very reluctant to record it, but we've done it.
It's over.
It's over. I mean, I like doing these sort of episodes because we could talk about the history and like what went into making these films. And, you know, when you adjust the numbers that, you know, box office and budget and stuff, you get some interesting insights. So sometimes it's good to go back and do these sorts of episodes. I know you weren't really looking forward to it, but I think some of our listeners might appreciate it.
I'm just glad it's over and I don't need to do it again.
Okay.
And I'm not looking forward to those wartime ones when they come across.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the other thing is, so when Raya and the Last Dragon does come out, so it's a hybrid release coming out on Disney Plus and the cinemas. Hopefully we can watch it in the cinemas by then. I'm going to give you an option now, and you're going to have to commit to it. So you can either watch Raya and the Last Dragon, or you can watch Chaos Walking, which are both coming out on the same day.
Oh, okay. Raya and the Last Dragon actually looks all right, but I don't know. I wouldn't mind watching Raya. It looks okay. It looks good. It looks probably better than Chaos Walking does.
It probably does. So I guess we'll both watch Raya and the Last Dragon, and if you guys want us to watch Chaos Walking and talk about it, I guess we could do that. I just don't think it'll be good. That's all.
Yeah. We'll see how the reviews look at them. Maybe if it's really bad, we'll watch it.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be really good. It's either going to be really bad or just okay. So thanks everyone for joining us. We've got, I guess the next episode which will come out will be something else, and then we'll have Raya and Last Dragon. I think there's a week in between. So, or I could be wrong. It could be the next week. But anyway, you'll find out. So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you guys next time.
Catch you guys in the next one.